You've probably heard the story when it broke last week, maybe in Catholic media, but I kind of doubt it. But the story about St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Last week, the Lepanto Institute issued a report that showed that St. Jude's was actively working against decency and Catholic morality, working with essentially the now the crowd of folks you are not permitted to criticize pretty much at all in the culture. Some of you might not have heard about that, so I'm going to give you a basic recap here of the worst from the Lepanto Institute report. And the reason I'm covering this today is because that story has gotten way worse. As a traditional Catholic organization has done some digging into St. Jude's history and found actual, quite literal ties to the stonecutters in its foundation, and that the founder of the organization is in fact not at all what he appeared to be. So let's talk about all that now. But first, let's talk a bit about being careful about how we have to talk about things on this platform. There are some people who don't like when I swap words out and things because they don't understand the kind of environment that we are operating in here. Or they have this really odd idea that people who spent years building something up should throw it all away so they don't have to figure out what it is someone is saying. This is a place that does not respect people's right to say things, even if it's about faith. And right now, as I tell you this, there are a fair number of channels that are just sort of disappearing now from this platform. It's political season again, and that does rather suspiciously happen around this time every few years. So yes, we're going to be careful about how we talk about things here. And so I'm going to go here to help you understand what something you're going to hear me say over and over again by going to Catholic Answers and showing you the list of the 7 deadly sins. This is a sort of the list as they appear in the Bible, but here is how we talk about them now. It's an article about this subject. You're going to see me use the term the first deadly sin. If you take a look at that list, you see that the article goes over how we got the 7 deadly sins and their general ordering. And if you find that kind of thing interesting, I will have the article linked in my show notes at returntotradition.org. Our hosts have rules against posting links to websites that have ads on them. That is their right to have a rule like that, and I do follow it as best I can. So you'll go to my site for the link, returntotradition.org. And the name of this channel with a .org at the end of it. It's a great backup place to follow the work here, and it's a free place. So, and in fact, I don't think there are any ads on the website. You'll notice that the first deadly sin is pride. It's often called the matriarch or the queen of sins because it's through our own egos that we believe we can do anything else that runs contrary to God's law, that the divine law doesn't apply to us on things that we want to do for our own evil inclinations. Note how that deadly sin has become the focus of celebration in the culture today. We have truly strayed far from God. So we're going to make a reference to the first deadly sin quite a lot here. So we turn to the quick version of the Lepanto Institute report because I'm not going to read the whole thing. I will have that also linked at my show notes at returntotradition.org for those who want to hear it, and for those who might be joining us late. I'm covering this again now instead of last week when it broke because a new angle on this story was released telling us everything that we know about this story and everything we know about this organization is false. Not that the story is false, but everything we know about the organization is false. So we go to the Lepanto Institute for a quick version of this. And it's a bit of a lengthy quote because this thing is really long. But after that report, I have another that builds on this and makes the story a lot worse. From the Lepanto Institute article, quote, St. Jude was founded in 1962 by the famous actor and comedian Danny Thomas. A Maronite Catholic, Thomas had a great devotion to St. Jude Thaddeus and made a promise that if he became successful as an entertainer, he would build a shrine to St. Jude. In the 1950s, his wife began raising funds for the establishment of St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital to make good on that promise. Unfortunately, despite its original mandate to help kids survive catastrophic illness, St. Jude has strayed into the promotion of gravely immoral ideologies by fighting anti-James Martin sin laws, sponsoring first deadly sin events, openly promoting the James Martin sin, and even marching with kiddos in those sort of public spectacle parade things. On the 1st of June 2024, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital was heavily represented at the Memphis First Deadly Sin Parade, wearing t-shirts that announced St. Jude's embraces that sin, carrying a banner with the same moniker, and waving those satanic flags, over 100 people representing the research hospital and their young kiddos showed up about 40 minutes into the parade. On the Mid South James Martin type organization website, three different aspects of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital were listed as, quote, vendors, which provided their own statements of support for the Satanic Festival. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital / ALSAC, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences. And on the Mid South First Deadly Sin page for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, the organization provided the following statement. Quote, the St. Jude First Deadly Sin Employee Resource Group, launched in 2018, is a safe place for discussion, professional networking, and support for members of the St. Jude GMP and Graduate School James Martin community and allies. We welcome employee participation and look forward to meeting you. We will have talent acquisition representatives on site with QR codes that link to our current job opportunities. In other words, St. Jude's Children's Hospital is actively recruiting members of that crowd to work at that hospital. There seems to be a lack of prudence there on their part. Our mission statement: people respecting individuality, and then some of the other buzzwords that form an acronym that is now censored on this platform, unfortunately, to serve, educate, and support the St. Jude James Martin crowd and our allies to promote the St. Jude mission. Community building among St. Jude James Martin crowd employees, education about James Martin favorite sins related issues and healthcare, service to the St. Jude and Memphis James Martin crowd, support for the crowd's employee well-being. These are all resources they have on their website. The page for ALSAC just provides a brief description of the organization, but the page for the Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences, after explaining what it is, closes with a statement. Quote, we are thrilled to be part of this year's Memphis's First Deadly Sin Fest, celebrating various secular values having to do with the appearance of the flesh and disordered inclinations, and the power of community in driving scientific progress and healing. End quote. That report goes on and on and on, showing it that this is not just them throwing money at a bad organization or participating in these public spectacles, but really going all in on it. St. Jude's has been for a few years now very publicly allies with enemies of the church. Many of us have over the years given money to that hospital because helping kids in need is without question a good idea and something we as Catholics should be doing. But all that throws this into question, because you might be thinking, so what? It turns out the story has gotten a lot worse. And so Lepanto Institute started this, and you'll notice at the beginning of this, they repeated kind of the official line from St. Jude's about its founding, its claim to its founding. Catholicism.org gives you this headline: St. Jude's was never a Catholic hospital, and Danny Thomas was a stonecutter. Yeah, he was. If you, as a Catholic, are a member of that organization, you incur automatic excommunication. You have to publicly renounce your affiliation with that organization in order to get back into the good graces of the church. And if you listen to what exorcists have to say, you might have to undergo some actual exorcisms because of the things you're required to do. And I have said recently, I'm not one who publicly or who goes around looking for this organization and its members behind every rock for every problem in society, partially because that organization has done such a great job of pushing disbelief in the culture that they now have a hard time themselves recruiting for their organization, which is perhaps poetic for them. But the effects that they've had on the culture are going to be with us for centuries unless we as Christians go out there and spread the gospel and bring souls to Christ and begin working on the individual members of the culture to then convert the culture. It's the only way out of this, or divine intervention. But you remember how I started this. The Lepanto Institute began with the official history of the hospital and its founder, talking about how he's a Maronite Catholic and all the rest of it. Again, that's the official line from St. Jude's itself. While they emphasize the Catholicity of its founding, they also deny that they are a Catholic hospital and have never been a Catholic hospital. How many of you, let me know in the live chat or in the comments, have over the years given money to St. Jude's under the assumption that they were a Catholic hospital? Being a member of the Stonecutters and organizations like them incurs automatic excommunication. and again requires a public renunciation of the organization to get back in the good graces of the church. Remember that. And remember the hospital was never founded as a Catholic institution. It isn't long, so we'll just go over the whole thing, but keep this in mind. As it turns out, because St. Jude's was never a Catholic hospital, it was founded by a Catholic, but it was never a hospital that was Catholic as an organization. It's always been independent. The use of saint in its name and founding is clever marketing. And I won't discount the intention of the founder who disregarded the church teaching on that organization. I won't say that he did not pray to St. Jude and built this hospital in honor of him. But it is clever marketing, which almost certainly helped it become what it is today. But it's never been a Catholic organization. If it had, there would have been oversight from a bishop or the bishops, multiple bishops maybe. That hasn't happened and has never been the case. Let's just go over this article. 3 days ago, we posted a Lepanto Institute press release warning about the hospital, which so many contribute to, assuming incorrectly that it is Catholic. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital marked not safe for donations by Charity Watchdog. St. Jude's is not now, nor has it ever been, a Catholic hospital. The hospital's website is transparent about it being a secular institution, quoting their website. We are not a Catholic hospital, nor are we affiliated with any religious organization. Our founder, Danny Thomas, was Catholic, and St. Jude Thaddeus was his patron saint. Danny Thomas, a Maronite Catholic of Lebanese descent, was a Knight Commander of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, appointed by Pope Paul VI, as being a, quote, devout and a devotee of St. Jude as part of the story of St. Jude's founding. But this does not mean the hospital was a Catholic institution. It never was. Thomas was also a high-ranking member of the in the modern world, the church's biggest adversary, who publicly extolled their craft and expressed pride in his membership. He was a member of that particular house associated with York in Hamilton Township, New Jersey. Publicly, he was this. He's also a member of the Scottish affiliation of that organization and that shrine in Los Angeles. According to the Big House of Pennsylvania, he had attained the top level. Since the 18th century, Catholics have been expressly forbidden to join that group under threats of severe canonical penalties. And it's since the 18th century, so if you're not familiar with the founding, the organization's formally founded in the early 18th century, formally. But if you go into their history, they've been around even before that, because you can't just have the various different flavor organization found within a couple of years of each other in the 18th century without a lot of work going into it first. They got really well organized at that time, but the people behind it had been doing their work and developing their ideas for centuries beforehand. There's some scholars suggest like the 12th century, where they took the equivalent of the bricklayers and the works that they would do because of their right of traveling. They would essentially took their organizations over, and from there they did their thing. The first papal condemnation of that organization was issued by Pope Clement XII on April 28, 1738, in the bull In Eminente Apostolata Specula. Since that time, Catholics have forbidden to be part of that group. Multiple papal interventions reiterated and expanded Clement's condemnation, eventually making membership in their houses an offense that incurred automatic excommunication. So, in other words, Danny Thomas was not a Catholic. He wasn't. He never renounced what he did. He had the opportunities to, but unless I'm mistaken, and if he did renounce his ties to that organization, then I stand corrected. But there is no record, as far as I am aware, of him doing so. The 1983 Code of Canon Law did not contain an explicit mention of the organization, but something else happened that same year to clarify the issue. In 1983, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, prefect of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, future Benedict XVI, with the personal approval of Pope John Paul II, issued a declaration on those associations, which reiterated the Church's objections to that organization. The 1983 declaration states that, quote, faithful who enroll in such associations are in a state of grave sin and may not receive Holy Communion. The Church's negative regard to such associations remains unchanged, since their principles have always been considered irreconcilable with the doctrine of the Church, and therefore membership in them remains forbidden. 1983 CDF stipulated that neither a 1974 declaration or a 1981 allowed any individual bishop or bishop's conference to permit Catholics to belong to such organizations. A long treatment of the church's historical stance on the organization and the craft's anti-Catholic bent may be read here. And then they got a link to an article. The column is not intended to malign Danny Thomas, but to set the record straight about St. Jude's and about his stonecutter involvement. During his lifetime, there were many in the hierarchy who sounded an uncertain trumpet about this matter, and so many other matters, with a link to, at the time, people trying to correct him. And he may legitimately have been confused, as others continue to be very confused to this day. And it's true, that might be the case. Remember, we are talking about that period of confusion in the church history where suddenly everything the church taught was being openly rejected, with the laity honestly believing that the church had changed its teachings on X, Y, and Z. Look at Humanae Vitae as the principal example of that, especially after the Canadian bishop said, who cares what the Pope said? You can do what you want on that issue. It's very plausible that you had, at the same time, Catholics saying, well, we've opened the church windows of the church to the world in the 1960s to let in some fresh air. And now all of a sudden, churchmen are talking like the guy down the street has been trying to come get me to join his little, men's group that we're not supposed to be part of. So maybe now I can actually join it because now they all sound like the churchmen sound like that. Could be the case. Maybe in your charity, pray for Danny Thomas, the repose of his soul, if he was legitimately confused. But that is the truth about this. It got worse after the Lepanto Institute report. There were other, Danny Thomas, the founder, was part of a condemned organization. And the organization was itself never Catholic. Never Catholic. Bear that in mind. Now, Michael Hitchborn, if you're watching this, or if somebody close to him is watching this, is there a chance you could put out a list of safe Catholic groups? And if there is one, you have one, I haven't found it on your website, I will do maybe on a Sunday stream or something, I'll do a live stream where we talk about organizations it's safe to donate to as Catholics. Because I can tell you, seminary funds and that kind of thing, and parish food boxes, those are your typical ones. But if that hospital covers issues that are particularly near and dear to your heart, and you want to donate to a Catholic organization, that one I don't know anything about. I looked, but I couldn't find anything that actually had the approval of various watchdogs, because there are a lot of Catholic organizations for it, but a lot of them I knew off the top of my head, like CRS, Catholic Relief Services, were not exactly the most trustworthy. But they've been the subject of Lepanto Institute whistleblowing in the past and other organizations. Jeff Reardon says, oh yeah, it reminds, pray for the repose of the soul of James Earl Jones, who passed away yesterday. Yes, he was a Catholic. He became a Catholic while he was in the military. And he has said numerous times over his life that his favorite role that he ever played in his career was not Darth Vader and not Mufasa in The Lion King, but it was actually his work on biblical narration was his favorite thing. And yes, he was a Catholic. So pray for the repose of his soul. He passed away. Well, the news broke yesterday. So is the St. Jude relic traveling around the United States authentic? That I don't know. Huge sales on cheap metals and books with the imprimatur of Cardinal Sean O'Malley. I don't trust generally modern Catholic books as a rule, so I don't know. But I don't know about the relics, if they're authentic or not. And just remember, you shouldn't be buying relics anyway. You shouldn't be. If you want a relic of if you want a relic like a second or third class relic, like typically a third class is what you could get yourself. If the relic is traveling, you just touch your rosary or your scapular or whatever to it, and it becomes a third class relic. But Edgy thinks that anything Catholic is a target for the infiltration of the church. Yeah, that is absolutely true. All right, folks. If there's any final comments here in this, we're just in the business of trying to give you some clarity here about things, especially when it's hard subjects for Catholics. So please pray for the repose of James Earl Jones, and of course, in your charity for Danny Thomas, who, if he was legitimately confused, then he might need those prayers right now. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.